The crimson sands of Zarian Prime stretched endlessly beneath twin suns, their heat shimmering off the crystalline spires of the alien capital. Captain Marcus Chen stood at the edge of the royal platform, his human heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. Below him, a million Zarianite warriors filled the vast amphitheater, their iridescent scales catching the light like living jewels. This was it. The moment that would either save Earth or doom it. Forever. Queen Zarathal rose from her obsidian throne, her towering 8-foot frame casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the light around her. Her 6 arms moved with fluid grace, each gesture commanding absolute attention from her subjects. The crown of living fire that circled her elongated skull pulsed with an otherworldly energy that made Marcus's teeth ache. Human, her voice resonated. Through the amphitheater, without amplification, carried by psychic waves that touched every mind present, you stand before the dominion of Zarian, accused of trespassing in sacred space. Your ship violated our territorial boundaries. Your species has proven itself unworthy of continued existence. Marcus swallowed hard, tasting copper and fear. The translation implant behind his ear buzzed with the effort of converting her complex language into something his human brain could process. 3 months ago, he'd been nothing more than a cargo pilot running supplies between Earth's outer colonies. Now he stood as humanity's last desperate hope, the alien queens for eyes 2 large primary orbs of molten gold, and 2 smaller secondary ones that saw into dimensions humans couldn't perceive fixed upon him with the intensity of dying stars. Her mouth filled with rows of crystalline teeth, curved into what might have been a smile on a human face, but looked distinctly predatory on hers. "Speak your final words, Marcus, Chen of Earth," she commanded, "before we reduce your pathetic world to cosmic dust." The amphitheater fell silent. A million alien warriors waited. The fate of 8 billion humans hung in the balance of whatever came out of his mouth next. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his species' survival pressing down on his shoulders like a mountain. He thought of his sister Sarah, working late shifts at the Mars Medical Station, of his old friend Tommy, teaching kids on Luna Colony, of all the humans who would never know how close they'd come to extinction. Then he did something that would echo through the galaxy for generations. To come, he dropped to one knee. "Queen Zarathal," he said, his voice cracking slightly as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his grandmother's engagement ring, a simple band of platinum with a small diamond that seemed impossibly tiny in this vast arena of alien power. "I know this might sound crazy, but ... will you marry me?" The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. A million alien warriors stared in shock. The queen's 4 eyes widened, her secondary arms freezing. Mid-dash gesture. Marcus rushed on, knowing he had maybe 3 seconds before they vaporized him. "I mean, think about it logically. You want to conquer Earth, right? But conquering is messy. Lots of destruction, resource, waste, rebellions to deal with. But marriage? Marriage is a merger, a peaceful alliance. You get Earth, I get to keep my species alive, and we can work together to build something amazing." He held up the tiny ring, which looked absurd in his shaking hand. "I know it's not much, but it belonged to my grandmother. She always said the right marriage could change the world. Figure maybe it could change the galaxy too." The queen stared at him for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, something incredible happened. She smiled. Not the predatory expression from before, but something softer. Something that transformed her alien features into something almost fond. "Finally," she said, and her psychic voice carried notes of warmth that made Marcus's knees weak with relief. "I was wondering when you'd ask." The amphitheater erupted in confusion. Warriors chittered and hissed in their complex language, unsure whether to celebrate or revolt. But Marcus could only stare up at the alien queen as she descended from her throne, each step causing the ground beneath his feet to tremble. You were expecting this?" He managed to ask. Queen Zarathal knelt beside him, bringing her towering frame down to something closer to his eye level. Up close, he could see that her scales weren't just iridescent, they were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories and languages. He couldn't begin to understand. "Marcus Chen," she said, her 4 eyes twinkling with what could only be described as amusement. "Did you really think your arrival here was an accident?" And that's when Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about First Contact, about alien invasions, and about his own desperate gambit was about to be turned completely upside down. The Queen reached out with one of her 4 hands and gently took the ring from his trembling fingers as her skin touched his. Marcus felt a jolt of electricity that seemed to connect him to something vast and ancient and impossibly complex. "But first," she said, standing and pulling him to his feet with surprising gentleness, "there are some things about your species that you need to understand, things that will change how you see everything." She turned to address the crowd, her voice booming across the amphitheater. "The human has made his proposal. According to ancient law, we have 7 cycles to complete the bonding trials. Prepare the ships, we return to his homeworld." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Bonding trials? The Queen's smile widened, showing more of those crystalline teeth. "Oh, my dear Marcus, marriage between our species is not just a ceremony. It's a transformation. By the time we're finished, you won't quite be human anymore." She leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "And Earth won't quite be the same planet either. But don't worry, that's the best part." As alien ships began rising from launch bays hidden beneath the crystalline city, Marcus realized that he'd just signed humanity up for something far more complex and dangerous than simple conquest. He'd signed them up for evolution. Chapter 2. The fleet that broke the sky, the journey back to Earth took 18 standard days. And Marcus spent every moment of it questioning his sanity. The Zerionite flagship Dominion's Edge was a living ship, literally. Its walls pulsed with a heartbeat, its corridors shifted and adapted based on the crew's needs, and the entire vessel seemed to breathe through vents that opened and closed. Like gills, Marcus stood in what the crew called the observation sphere, transparent bubble that protruded from the ship's hull and offered a 360-degree view of space. Behind them stretched a fleet of 300 vessels, each one a masterpiece of biotechnology that made humanity's best ships look like stone tools by comparison. "Having second thoughts?" Queen Zerathel asked, materializing beside him with the unsettling silence that all Zerionites seemed to possess. Her reflection in the transparent walls showed multiple overlapping images, as if she existed in several dimensions simultaneously. "Just trying to process everything," Marcus admitted. 3 weeks ago, I was hauling medical supplies to Titan. Now I'm engaged to an alien queen and leading an invasion fleet toward my home planet. It's a lot." The Queen's laugh was like wind chimes made of crystal, not an invasion, Marcus. Courtship. There's a significant difference, though, I admit. The end result often looks similar from the outside. She moved closer, her 4 arms gesturing to the star field ahead. "Your species has always fascinated us. Do you know why?" Marcus shook his head, still mesmerized by the way her scales seemed to shift color based on her mood. Right now they showed deep blues and purples, colors he'd learned indicated contentment and curiosity. "Because you're chaos," she said simply. "Beautiful, creative, destructive chaos. Every other species we've encountered follows predictable patterns. They evolve, they expand, they stagnate, they die. But humans?" She turned to face him fully, all 4 eyes focusing on his face with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading his soul. "Humans break every rule. You shouldn't exist, and yet you do. You shouldn't have survived your own violent nature, and yet you've spread across dozens of worlds. You shouldn't be capable of the kind of desperate courage that made you propose to me, and yet here we are." "So this is all some kind of experiment?" Marcus asked, trying to keep the hurt out of his voice. "No," Zerathal said, and her scales shifted to warm golds and greens, colors of affection and sincerity. "This is love, Marcus. Or at least the beginning of it. Your species calls it love at first sight, but for us, it's more like love at first chaos. The moment we detected your ship stumbling through hyperspace with half your engines dead and your navigation computer fried, I knew you were special." Marcus remembered that trip, a harrowing journey through an unmapped nebula. When his autopilot had malfunctioned, He'd been lost for 6 days before emerging in Zerionite space, more dead than alive. You've been watching us, he realized. All of humanity. For how long? Longer than your species has been capable of abstract thought, she admitted. We've been waiting for you to become ready for the next stage of your evolution. The question is whether you'll survive it. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, the ship's communication system crackled to life. The voice that emerged spoke in rapid Zerionite, but Marcus's translator caught enough to make his blood run cold. What's wrong? He asked, seeing the Queen's scales flash to warning reds and oranges. Your planet's defense systems have detected us, she said grimly. They're mobilizing every ship in the Sol system. It seems humanity has decided to fight rather than listen. Through the observation sphere, Marcus could see the familiar blue-white glow of Earth's sun growing larger ahead of them, but something was wrong with the view. The space around Earth flickered and shimmered like heat distortion. The lunar defense grid, Marcus whispered. They've activated the reality anchors. Zarathel's expression grew serious. Your species developed dimensional warfare? Not developed, reverse-engineered. We found some wrecked ships near Jupiter about 10 years ago. The technology was so advanced we could barely understand it, but we managed to build defensive systems based on what we learned. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Her scales cycling through colors Marcus had never seen before. Deep purples shot through with veins of silver that seemed to move independently. Marcus, she said finally, those weren't random derelicts your people found. Those were Zerionite ships. From the scouting fleet I sent to observe your species 20 years ago. The implications hit him like a physical blow, you mean? People reverse-engineered weapons specifically designed to fight my fleet. Yes. She turned away from the view, her multiple arms moving in complex patterns that Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. This complicates things considerably. Will you call off the attack? Marcus asked hopefully. There is no attack, Zarathal replied. But there will be now. The moment your defense systems lock onto us, ancient protocols will activate. My fleet will respond as if we're under assault. I won't be able to stop them, and we have to warn Earth. Let me send a message. It's too late. The Queen's voice was heavy with regret. Look, Marcus turned back to the observation sphere and felt his heart sink. The space around Earth was now filled with the distinctive geometric patterns of humanity's defensive network coming online. Thousands of automated weapons platforms were emerging from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, their targeting arrays already sweeping toward the approaching Zerionite fleet. How long do we have? He asked. Minutes? Maybe less? Zarathal moved to the ship's communication panel, her 4 arms working with incredible speed. I'm going to try something that has never been attempted between our species. Direct psychic. Broadcast to every human mind in the system simultaneously. Is that even possible? For most Zerionites? No. But I am the Queen. My abilities are ... considerable. She paused, looking back at him with something that might have been apology in her alien features. Marcus, this is going to hurt. The bonding. The process wasn't supposed to begin until after the courtship trials. But if I'm going to reach your people's minds, I need a psychic anchor among your species. I need to link with you. Now, what does that mean? It means that in about 30 seconds, you're going to experience the collective consciousness of 3 billion Zerionites. And they're going to experience one human mind trying not to go insane. From the contact, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The fleet around them was shifting into combat formation, their bioweapons charging with energy that made space itself seem to bend and twist. Do it, Marcus said, reaching out to take one of her hands. Whatever it takes to stop a war. Zarathel's 4 eyes blazed with power as she gripped his hand tightly. Hold on to who you are, Marcus Chen, and whatever you do, don't let go. The last thing Marcus saw before the psychic link activated was Earth's defense grid powering up to full intensity, turning the space around his homeworld into a maze of deadly energy barriers. Then 3 billion alien minds crashed into his consciousness like a tsunami. And Marcus Chen ceased to exist as anything resembling human, at least. For the next several minutes, Chapter 3. When minds collide, Marcus existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. He was a drop of water in an ocean of consciousness so vast that human language had no words for it. He experienced reality as the Zirianites did, not as a single timeline, but as infinite branching, possibilities all existing at once. He saw through Queen Zarathel's eyes as she broadcast their combined thoughts toward Earth. He felt her struggle to compress the complexity of Zirianite consciousness into concepts that human minds could grasp, without shattering completely. And through it all, he held on to one simple truth. He was Marcus Chen, and he loved his species enough to risk everything to save them. People of Earth. The psychic broadcast thundered across the solar system, reaching every human mind from the mining stations of the asteroid belt to the research outposts orbiting Pluto. We come not as conquerors, but as family. One of your own has asked for union between our peoples. We seek alliance, not domination. On Earth, 8 billion people suddenly stopped what they were doing as alien thoughts flooded their consciousness. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Sarah Chun Marcus's sister staggered as she recognized her brother's mental signature woven through the alien broadcast. "Marcus," she whispered, her hand hovering over the firing controls that would unleash humanity's most powerful weapons.
Marcus, is that really you?
Through the psychic link, Marcus felt his sister's presence like a warm candle in an infinite darkness. He focused all his will on projecting a single message to her. Sarah, it's me. Don't fire. Please. Give us a chance to explain. But other human minds were not so receptive. Throughout the solar system, panic spread like wildfire. The psychic contact was too alien, too overwhelming for most people to process. On Mars, riots broke out as colonists demanded immediate evacuation. On Europa Station, the entire research staff went into psychic shock and had to be sedated. Worse yet, Marcus could feel the Zirianite fleet's automatic defense systems responding to the chaos, ancient warrior protocols programmed into their living ships over millions of years of evolution were interpreting the human panic as an attack. Weapon systems were charging. Biocannons were extending from ship hulls like thorns from roses. Hold. Queen Zarathal commanded her fleet, but Marcus could feel her control slipping. The collective consciousness of her people was too vast, too complex for even a queen to dominate completely. We are in courtship phase. Weapons are forbidden. The humans are broadcasting fear frequencies, came the response from thousands of ship minds. Fear is aggression. Aggression requires defense. Defense requires offense. Offense requires destruction. The logic was alien, but inexorable. Marcus felt the fleet's weapon systems reaching critical charge levels. In moments, they would fire automatically, regardless of their queen's commands. That's when something incredible. Hoppany, new voice, joined the psychic network young, determined, and completely human. No, said Tommy Rodriguez, Marcus's old friend from Luna Colony, who was now teaching a classroom full of 8-year-olds. You're wrong about us. We're not attacking. We're scared. Sure, but scared doesn't mean hostile. Let me show you. Before anyone could stop him, Tommy opened his mind completely to the alien network. Through the psychic link, 3 billion Zirianites suddenly experienced a human elementary school classroom. They felt the wonder of children learning about the stars, the patience of a teacher explaining complex concepts in simple terms, the love that drove humans to nurture their young, even in the harsh environment of a lunar colony. Other humans began following. Tommy's example, Dr. Alina Vasquez at the Mars Medical Station opened her mind to show the aliens how humans cared for their sick and injured. Engineer Yuki Tanaka on the Jupiter mining platform shared the satisfaction humans felt when working together to solve impossible problems. Artist Maria Santos in Earth's orbital galleries showed them the beauty humans created simply for the joy of creation itself. Within minutes, psychic network was flooded with human experiences of love, creativity, sacrifice, and hope. The Zerionite war protocols, designed to respond to aggression and hostility, found nothing to fight against. Instead, they encountered something their million-year-old programming had never anticipated. A species that responded to fear not with violence, but with compassion. This is unprecedented. Came a transmission from the Zerionite Warfleet commander. The humans are not defensing. They are ... sharing. Queen Zarathel's mental voice carried notes of wonder and growing affection. Yes, this is why they fascinate us. This is why they are ready for the next stage. Marcus felt the weapon systems throughout the fleet, powering down as the ancient. War protocols were overridden by something even more fundamental: curiosity. The Zerionites had encountered countless species across the galaxy, but none had ever responded to first contact by voluntarily sharing their most intimate thoughts and emotions. Admiral Chen, the Queen's voice reached out specifically to Marcus's sister on Luna Command. Your brother has asked for my hand in marriage. According to our laws, this requires a formal courtship period during which our species must prove their compatibility. Will you grant us permission to approach your world in peace? Sarah Chen looked around the Lunar Command Center, where her staff was monitoring thousands of simultaneous psychic contacts between humans and aliens. On every screen, she could see the same thing, not the chaos of invasion, but the awkward, wonderful confusion of two completely different species trying to understand each other for the first time. Permission granted, she said, and meant it. Welcome to the solar system, Your Majesty. But if you hurt my brother, I'm going to personally kick your ass across 3 galaxies. The Queen's laughter echoed through 3 billion alien minds and 8 billion human ones. I would expect nothing less from Marcus's sister. You humans truly are remarkable. As the combined fleets approached Earth under a flag of truce, Marcus felt himself slowly separating from the vast Zerionite consciousness and returning to his own mind. The experience left him fundamentally changed. Could still sense the alien thoughts at the edges of his awareness, and he suspected he always would now. How do you feel? Queen Zarathal asked as he blinked and found himself back in the observation sphere. Still human, but somehow more than he had been before. Different, he admitted. I'm seeing colors that don't have names. That's the bonding process beginning, she explained. Over the next few days, you'll develop limited psychic abilities. Enhanced empathy, emotional resonance, perhaps even brief glimpses of future possibilities. It's necessary for our species to mate successfully. And what about Earth? What happens to my people during this courtship period? Zarothal's scales shifted to warm golds, the color of happiness and anticipation. They get to see what the galaxy really looks like, Marcus, and they get to decide whether they want to be part of it. Through the observation sphere, Marcus could see Earth growing larger ahead of them, blue and white and beautiful, surrounded now by both human and alien ships in the most unlikely alliance in galactic history. But he could also sense something else. Through his new psychic abilities, other presences, vast and ancient and not entirely friendly, had taken notice of what was happening in the Sol system. The union of humans and Zerionites was creating ripples that would spread far beyond Earth's local space. Some of those ripples were about to attract attention from things that made the Zerionite war fleet look like children playing with toys. Zarathel, he said quietly, are we the only 2 species trying to make this work? Her scales flickered to warning colors before she could stop them. What do you mean? Can sense something else out there, something that doesn't like what we're doing. The Queen was quiet for a long moment, then sighed a sound like wind through crystal caves. There are other powers in the galaxy, Marcus, ancient ones. They have ruled through separation and conflict for millions of years. A successful alliance between chaos bringers like humans and order builders, like my people, would threaten everything they've built. So we're not just planning a wedding, we're starting a revolution. Yes, she said simply. And they're going to try to stop us. As Earth's orbital platforms came into view, bristling with both human technology and the first Zerionite cultural exchange stations, Marcus realized that their courtship was about to become the opening battle in a war that would determine the fate of every thinking species in the galaxy. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it filled him with something he hadn't felt since this whole crazy adventure began. Hope, after all. If there was one thing humans excelled at, it was winning impossible fights through sheer stubborn determination. And now they had allies who could match their chaos with 1,000,000,000 years of strategic brilliance. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when order and chaos decided to dance together. Chapter 4. The wedding that shook the galaxy 3 months after first contact. Earth had become unrecognizable. Crystalline spires grown from Zerionite biotechnology rose alongside human skyscrapers in every major city. The skies buzzed with hybrid vessels that combined human engineering with alien organic design. And in Central Park, of all places, construction. Crews from 6 different species were building the most ambitious wedding venue in galactic history. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the orbital station New Unity, watching the preparations below. The venue was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, a living cathedral that grew from the Earth itself. Its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the emotions of everyone inside. Human musicians were rehearsing alongside. Zerionite harmony weavers, creating music that touched both auditory senses and psychic frequencies. Nervous? Sarah Chen asked, joining her brother at the observation window. She wore the new hybrid uniform of Earth's Integrated Defense Force human cut and material, but adorned with Zerionite communication crystals that allowed instant coordination across species barriers. Terrified, Marcus admitted. Marrying Zerathal that feels right in ways I can't explain.
How about everything else? The politics, the other alien species arriving every day? The reports from our deep space monitoring stations?
Sarah followed his gaze to the edge of the solar system, where long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. The wedding guests? Some of them. Others, ... Marcus trailed off as his enhanced senses picked up something that made his skin crawl. Others aren't here to celebrate. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of revelations. The galaxy, it turned out, was far more crowded and complex than humanity had ever imagined. The Zerionite Empire was just one of dozens of major powers, and the announcement of their alliance with humanity had sent shockwaves through galactic politics. Some species were thrilled. The peaceful botanical collectives saw humanity as potential allies in their struggle against more aggressive neighbors. The machine intelligence known as the Logic Concordance was fascinated by human creativity and wanted to establish trade relationships, but others were less welcoming. The hegemony of pure thought viewed humans as contaminated chaos bringers who would corrupt the galaxy's natural order. The Shadow Syndicate, a consortium of species that profited from intergalactic conflict, saw the human Zerionite alliance as a threat to their business model. And then there were the Ancients, the oldest species in the galaxy, but remained hidden for millions of years, but were now emerging from their hidden domains with purposes unknown. Marcus, Sarah said quietly, we've got incoming. On the horizon, a new ship was approaching Earth. It was massive, easily the size of Manhattan, and it didn't match the design philosophy of any known species. Its hull was a perfect black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and it moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. That's not on the guest list, Marcus muttered, activating his communication implant. Zerothal, we have an unknown vessel approaching. Are you? I see it, came her psychic response, tinged with worry. Asterisk, it's ancient technology. Older than our civilization. Older than most civilizations. We need to get you somewhere safe. Asterisk, no, Marcus said firmly. Whatever this is, we face it together. That's what marriage means, right? He could feel her love and exasperation through their bond in equal measure. Asterisk, sometimes I forget how impossibly stubborn your species can be. Asterisk, it's one of our better qualities. The ancient vessel came to a halt directly above Earth's atmosphere, casting a shadow that could be seen from the planet's surface. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a beam of energy descended from the ship's center and struck the wedding venue in Central Park. Marcus held his breath, expecting destruction. Instead, the energy beam seemed to scan the entire area before withdrawing. A moment later, a new structure began materializing next to the living cathedrals, something that looked like it was built from crystallized time itself. Its surfaces, showing glimpses of past and future simultaneously. Asterisk, a diplomatic pavilion. Queen Zarathal's voice carried notes of amazement. The ancients wished to attend the ceremony. Is that good or bad? Asterisk, I honestly have no idea. No one has spoken to the ancients in 3 million years. The fact that they're here at all is unprecedented. Asterisk, over the next several hours, more ships arrived. The botanical collectives sent a massive seed vessel that bloomed into a garden paradise in Earth's orbit. The Logic Concordance dispatched a geometric construct that analyzed everything within a 100-mile radius before declaring the proceedings statistically fascinating. Even species Marcus had never heard of began arriving crystalline beings. From the galactic core, energy enteities from nebular regions, stranger things that defied easy description. By the day of the wedding, Earth was hosting the largest gathering of intergalactic civilizations in recorded history. The ceremony itself as unlike anything ever attempted, Marcus stood at the altar-living platform that had grown from the Earth itself, wearing a hybrid suit that incorporated both human formal wear and Zerionite ceremonial elements. Queen Zarathal approached. From the other side, her forearms carrying symbolic gifts from her people, crystallized starlight, water from her homeworld's ancient oceans, soil from the first planet her species had ever colonized, and fire that had burned in her families. Temples for 1,000,000 years. The officiant was an unexpected choice, Tommy Rodriguez, Marcus's old friend, who had volunteered to undergo temporary psychic enhancement so he could speak for both species simultaneously. His voice carried both human warmth and Zerionite harmonic frequencies as he began the ceremony. We are gathered here today not just to witness a marriage, but to celebrate the beginning of a new age, Tommy said, his words translating automatically for the hundreds of different species in attendance. For the first time in galactic history, two completely different forms of consciousness have chosen to unite not through conquest or absorption, but through love and mutual respect. As the ceremony progressed, Marcus felt something incredible happening. The psychic bonds that connected him to Zarathal were expanding, reaching out to touch the minds of every person present. Humans found themselves understanding alien perspectives they'd never imagined. Zerionites experienced human emotions with new depth and complexity. And the other species began forming connections that transcended traditional barriers of communication and understanding. But not everyone was pleased with this development. Just as Tommy was about to pronounce them married, the space above the ceremony site tore open like fabric being ripped apart. Through the dimensional rift stepped something that made every living being present recoil in instinctive terror. The creature, if it could be called, that was a writhing mass of shadow and hunger that existed in too many dimensions simultaneously. Its voice, when it spoke, bypassed language entirely and carved words directly into the minds of everyone present. Asterisk, this union is forbidden, it declared. Asterisk, the separation of species is absolute law. Violation requires correction. Correction requires elimination. Asterisk, Marcus felt. Queen Zarathal's 4 hands grip his arms protectively, her scales flashing to deep red warning colors. Around them, representatives from dozens of species were backing away from the shadow entity, their various forms of communication, creating a babel of terror. But then something unexpected happened. From the ancient pavilion came a sound like the birth of stars, deep, resonant, and filled with power that predated most known civilizations. The crystallized time structure began to glow with light that seemed to exist in frequencies beyond normal perception. Asterisk, you have no authority here, Shadowfeeder, came a new voice speaking in harmonics that made the air itself sing. This union is sanctioned by laws older than your hunger. Asterisk, a figure emerged from the ancient pavilion, tall, luminous, and beautiful in ways that human language couldn't describe. It looked like what angels might become if they evolved for 1 billion years, its form shifting between states of matter and energy as it moved. The shadow entity writhed in apparent pain at the ancient's presence. Asterisk, the old laws are broken. The new order demands separation. Chaos must not unite with order. Asterisk, asterisk, then perhaps. The ancient replied, its voice carrying notes of amusement that sounded like galaxies laughing. It is time for a new order entirely. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a conflict between fundamental forces, entropy and creation, isolation and connection, fear and love. The shadow entity brought weapons that unmade reality itself, while the ancient countered with tools that rewove the fabric of space-time, like a cosmic loom, but the real battle was happening on a different level entirely. Through his bond with Queen Zerothal, Marcus could feel the psychic network that had formed during the ceremony. Every mind-present human, Zerionite, and dozens of other species was connected by threads of understanding and empathy. The shadow entity fed on separation, on the fear and hatred that kept species isolated from each other. But here, in this moment, isolation was impossible. The wedding had created something unprecedented, a truly intergalactic community. And community, Marcus realized, was the one thing that beings like the shadow entity couldn't survive. Asterisk everyone, he broadcast through the psychic network. His human determination amplified by Zerionite mental discipline. Asterisk hold on to each other. Don't let it separate us. Whatever we do together. Asterisk, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Human courage mixed with Zerionite wisdom, botanical patience combined with logic concordance analysis. Even species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves standing together against a common threat to the very concept of unity. The shadow entity's scream of rage and pain echoed across dimensions as it found itself unable to feed on a community that refused to be divided. Its form began to weaken, reality reasserting itself around the wedding venue. Asterisk, this is not over. It hissed as it retreated back through the dimensional rift. Asterisk, unity is an aberration. Order will be restored. Asterisk, the rift snapped closed, leaving only the lingering smell of ozone and the memory of cosmic terror. In the silence that followed, the ancient turned to Marcus and Queen Zerothal, its luminous form pulsing with what might have been approval. Congratulations, it said simply.
Asterisk, your
Marriage has just prevented the galaxy's first interdimensional war in 3 million years. We look forward to seeing what you accomplish for an encore. Asterisk, Tommy Rodriguez. His temporary psychic enhancement still active, cleared his throat and raised his voice above the stunned murmur of the crowd. Well, he said with a grin that was pure human resilience, I guess that makes it official. By the power vested in me by Earth's government, the Zerionite Empire, and apparently some very ancient cosmic laws, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss the bride, or groom, or however this works with 4 arms in dimensional existence. Queen Zerathal's laugh rang out across the wedding venue like crystal bells, her scales shifting to the warm golds of pure happiness. She leaned down to Marcus's height and kissed him with a tenderness that somehow translated perfectly across species barriers. And in that moment, as their lips touched and their minds joined completely for the first time, Marcus felt something incredible. Through their bond, he could sense the vast network of connections spreading outward from Earthlinks between species that had never existed before. Alliances forming across galactic distances, and the birth of something that would change the universe forever. A true intergalactic civilization, built not on conquest or domination, but on the radical idea that different could be better when it was together. As the celebration began around them, humans dancing with Zerionites, beings sharing wisdom with logic concordance entities, and botanical collectives literally growing with joy, Marcus realized that their wedding had been just the beginning. The real adventure was about to start. #. Epilogue. 6 months later, the conference room aboard the flagship Unity's Dawn was a marvel of interspecies design. The table was grown from living crystal that could reshape itself to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and physiologies. The walls displayed real-time data streams from across the galaxy, showing the rapid expansion of what historians were already calling the Unity Alliance. Marcus Chenzarathal. He'd taken his wife's name as part of the bonding ceremony, stood at the head of the table, his appearance subtly changed by 6 months of marriage to a psychic alien queen. His eyes now held flecks of gold that seemed to glow in dim light, and his hair had taken on an almost crystalline quality that shifted color based on his emotional state.
Ow.
More importantly, his mind had expanded beyond purely human limitations, allowing him to process the complex, multidimensional strategies required to lead an intergalactic alliance. "Report," he said, his voice carrying harmonic frequencies that allowed every species present to understand him perfectly. "Ambassador." Quiche of the botanical collectives rustled her leaf-like appendages, her translator converting the sound into words. 47 new species have requested membership in the Alliance this month alone. The Shadow Feeder attacks have actually accelerated recruitment. No one wants to face those things alone. Commander Zix9 of the Logic Concordance projected holographic data into the center of the table. Statistical analysis indicates that Unity-based civilizations show 347% greater survival rates against extra-dimensional threats. The mathematical benefits of cooperation have become impossible to ignore. Queen Zarathal entered the room, her 4 arms carrying data crystals from the latest scouting reports. Marriage had changed her as well. Her scales now showed subtle patterns that hadn't existed before, complex designs that seemed to tell the story of her bond with Marcus in colors that only other bonded pairs could fully understand. "The Ancient Collective has agreed to share defensive technologies," she announced, settling into the chair that had grown from the floor to accommodate her unique physiology. "But they're concerned about the Shadow Feeder's increasing organization. What we faced at our wedding was just a scout. They're building something much larger." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. Through their bond, he could sense his wife's worry, and beyond that, the distant presence of things that existed in the spaces between realities, hungry and patient, and utterly hostile to the concept of interspecies cooperation. "How much time do we have?" he asked. "Unknown," replied an ancient representative who materialized in the room like a living constellation. "The Shadow Feeders exist outside conventional time streams. They could attack tomorrow, or they could wait millennia for the perfect moment. But they will attack, Marcus Chenzarathal. Your marriage has created something they cannot tolerate, proof that the universe tends toward unity rather than division." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist, looked up from her tablet where she'd been analyzing the latest data from human-alien hybrid research. "There's something else," she said hesitantly. "The bonding process between humans and Xerionites is accelerating. We're seeing third-generation offspring who are, well, they're neither human nor Xerionite. They're something entirely new." "Is that a problem?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "From a scientific standpoint, no. These children are remarkable. They combine human creativity with Xerionite psychic abilities, and they seem to have an intuitive understanding of interdimensional physics that surpasses both parent species." But politically, Queen Zerothal's scales shifted to worried blues. The Purist Coalition is using the hybrid children as propaganda. They claim we're creating an invasive species that will eventually replace all pure-blood races. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of leadership pressing down on him like a physical force. When he'd proposed to an alien queen to save his species, he'd never imagined he'd end up responsible for preventing the galaxy's first interdimensional civil war. "What about the other alliances?" he asked. "Are the traditional power blocks responding to our expansion?" Commander Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, thanks to her role in establishing the integrated defense protocols, activated her own set of displays. "It's mixed. The Democratic Federation of Outer Rim Worlds wants to join us, but they're being pressured by the hegemony of pure thought. The Machine Intelligence Consortium has split some factions, see us as a threat to order, others view us as an interesting experiment, and the Syndicate." Sarah's expression darkened. "They're actively recruiting the species we've rejected, the ones too aggressive or parasitic for Alliance membership. Intelligence suggests they're building their own coalition specifically to counter us. Marcus stood and walked to the room's primary viewing port, gazing out at the fleet that surrounded them. Ships from dozens of different species flew in perfect formation, their diverse technologies working together in ways that should have been impossible. Human vessels, with their angular efficiency, flew alongside flowing Xerionite bioships. Crystalline ancient constructs moved in harmony with the geometric perfection of logic concordance drones. It was beautiful. It was unprecedented. And according to every military analyst in the galaxy, it was probably doomed. You know what the strangest part is? Marcus said, not turning away from the view. 6 months ago, I was nobody. A cargo pilot running medical supplies between colonies. Now I'm supposedly one of the most important people in the galaxy, and I still have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. Queen Zarathal joined him at the viewport, her forearms wrapping around him in a gesture that had become comfortingly familiar. That's what makes you perfect for this job, she said, her psychic voice warm with affection and amusement. Anyone who thinks they know how to run an intergalactic alliance is probably too dangerous to trust with the responsibility. Besides, added Tommy Rodriguez from his position as Chief of Interspecies Relations, a job title that still made him laugh. Being clueless hasn't stopped humans from accomplishing impossible things before. We're kind of famous for succeeding through sheer stubborn refusal to admit when we're outmatched. The ancient representative pulsed with colors that indicated approval. This is why we chose to support your union. Most species, when faced with challenges beyond their understanding, either surrender or attack blindly. Humans analyze, adapt, and somehow find ways to turn disadvantages into strengths. The question is whether we can do it fast enough, Marcus said. If the Shadow Feeders are building something bigger, and the Purist Coalition is actively working against us, and half the galaxy thinks we're either saviors or destroyers, ... He was interrupted by an urgent chime from the ship's communication system. The voice that emerged spoke in the rapid, melodic tones of a Xerionite communications officer. My Queen, Admiral Chen, we're receiving a priority transmission from the deep space monitoring stations. Multiple large vessels have just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the galaxy. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures match Shadow Feeder technology. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as the implications hit him. How many ships? Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. They're maintaining position at the galactic rim, but they're definitely scanning our space. Queen Zarathal's scales flashed to deep crimson, the color of extreme danger. They're not just building something bigger. They've already built it. This is the Shadow Feeder response to our alliance. Battle stations? Admiral Chen asked, her hand already moving toward the fleet-wide alert controls. No, Marcus said, surprising everyone in the room, not yet. If we respond with military force, we play into their hands. They want us to be the aggressors, to prove that unity is just another form of conquest. Then what do you suggest? Commander Zixneen asked, his mechanical voice carrying notes of confusion. The statistical probability of peaceful resolution. With Shadow Feeders approaches 0, or Cass turned back to face the assembled representatives. His mind racing through possibilities and strategies, with the enhanced cognitive abilities his bonding had granted him. We do what humans do best, he said finally. We find a third option that nobody else has thought of. And what would that be? The ancient representative asked, its star-like form pulsing with curiosity. Marcus smiled. For the first time in weeks, it was a genuinely confident expression. We invite them to a party. The silence that followed was so complete that the ship's bioenvironmental systems could be heard adjusting the atmospheric composition. Marcus, Queen Zerothal said carefully, Shadow Feeders don't attend parties. They consume civilizations. It's literally what they exist to do. Exactly, Marcus replied. They're expecting us to either fight them or try to negotiate. They're not expecting us to offer them something they've never encountered before. Voluntary integration into a community that's stronger than the sum of its parts. Dr. Vasquez was the first to understand what he was suggesting. You want to? Invite them to join the alliance. Not just join it, Marcus said, his excitement growing as the plan took shape in his mind. Lead it. Think about it, the shadow feeders exist to prevent chaos and maintain separation between species. But what if chaos and order aren't opposites? What if they're two sides of the same thing, and the real enemy is stagnation? Admiral Chen shook her head. Marcus, these things tried to kill you at your own wedding. They're not going to suddenly decide to play nice because you offer them a seat at the table. Maybe not, Marcus admitted. But here's the thing about shadow feeders, that everyone forgets they're not evil. They're a force of nature, like gravity or electromagnetic radiation. They maintain cosmic balance by preventing any one species or alliance from becoming too powerful. But we're not trying to become powerful. We're trying to become diverse. Queen Zarathel's scales shifted through a rapid sequence of colors as she processed the implications. You think they might see the alliance as serving their own function? Preventing stagnation and encouraging growth through conflict and cooperation? It's worth a try, Marcus said. And if it doesn't work, we'll be in exactly the same position. We're in now facing an enemy we can't defeat through conventional means. The ancient representative was Ku. I'd for a long moment, its form cycling through colors that existed beyond normal perception. Finally it spoke, in 3 million years of galactic civilization. No one has ever attempted to negotiate with shadow feeders. Most species aren't even aware that negotiation is theoretically possible. Because most species think in terms of us versus them, Tommy added, catching on to Marcus's reasoning. But the alliance is built on the idea that us and them can become we. Commander Zixnuts. Optical sensors flickered as he ran rapid calculations. The statistical probability of success remains low, but is significantly higher than the probability of military victory. I recommend proceeding with the diplomatic initiative. Marcus looked around the room at the representatives of dozens of species beings who 6 months ago couldn't have imagined working together, now united in their willingness to attempt the impossible. All in favor of inviting the scariest force in the galaxy to join our multi-species utopia, he asked. Every appendage, tentacle, manipulator, and hand in the room rose in agreement. Motion carried, Queen Zarathal said with a laugh that carried notes of terror and exhilaration in equal measure. I'll prepare the invitation. Though I have to admit, this is going to be the most interesting anniversary party in galactic history. As the meeting broke up and representatives hurried to their respective ships to begin preparations, Marcus remained at the viewport, watching the stars. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel the vast shadow fleet waiting at the galaxy's edge, patient, hungry, and utterly alien. But he could also feel something else. The growing network of connections that linked every member of the alliance, the bonds of understanding that grew stronger with each passing day, and the steady, inexorable expansion of the radical idea that different could be better when it worked together 6 months ago. He'd asked an alien queen to marry him to save his species. Now he was about to ask the galaxy's ultimate predators to join his family. If this worked, it would revolutionize the concept of intergalactic civilization forever. If it failed, there might not be a galaxy left to revolutionize. But as Queen Zarathal joined him at the viewport, her forearms wrapping around him in perfect trust and partnership, Marcus realized that he wouldn't trade this impossible, terrifying, wonderful life for anything. After all, he'd already accomplished the impossible once. How hard could it be to do it again? To be continued in The Shadow Feeder Embassy, a Unity Alliance novel.